A very active weather pattern is setting up for the second half of November, followed by Arctic air. Here to give you all the information that we have on this. My name is Mitch. Good Friday morning. Hope you guys are doing well. Subscribe if you haven't. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So let's start it off with the time frame between now going all the way up to about Thanksgiving week. And then we're going to break down a time period between Thanksgiving all the way into the early to middle portion of the month of December. So let's break it down west to east, which is the way our weather flows. And we're going to start off with Sunday, this coming Sunday, November the 16th. We got some active weather beginning to enter the western U.S. And we'll show the eastern U.S. here in a second. We got to watch this storm system. What is this going to bring? I don't think there'll be a whole lot of cold air to work with this. So not a lot of higher elevation, well, not a lot of, I would say, mid to lower level elevation snow, but higher elevation snow will certainly be possible. And we just got to watch this energy as it kind of makes its way across the southwest. And what does it do once it gets to the middle of the country? We'll speak on that here in a second. But as we are starting to get to the middle portion of next week and really late next work week, a big system is showing up on the Euro off the coast of California. And this could bring a lot of moisture, but still not a lot of cold air, not a true cold air feed into this moisture. So more so cut off energy with not a true cold air source. But we got to watch this. This could get kind of trapped, kind of hung up down here off the coast of California, bring a lot of moisture to California. Does it eject across the western U.S.? We just got to watch. And then we get all the way up into about the early portion, the early portion of about Thanksgiving week or so. And that's when we got to watch for a significant pattern change. A lot more cold air begins to work down into the western U.S. and things could definitely change after that. So we'll stop this right here and we'll go to the eastern U.S. What are we seeing between now and about the early portion of Thanksgiving week? So we get this in motion, and we do have a system I want to watch around Tuesday, Wednesday of next week. Is there going to be enough cold air to feed into what moisture there is across the Ohio Valley and the Mid-Atlantic, the Northeast? Certainly need to watch. Some model runs have showed a little bit of snow in areas of the Mid-Atlantic and Pennsylvania, surrounding states, but latest Euro not showing much of that. I just want to watch a significant storm system though across the middle of the country into areas of the eastern U.S. as we get into like the middle to late portion of next work week. And this is a pretty strong low pressure that ejects across the country. You can see a lot of green, a lot of rain, moisture. You're not seeing really any blue or pink or anything like that indicating any kind of winter weather. I don't think this will really have any cold air to work with, even all the way up into the upper Midwest. So we got a deep low pressure cutting across the country. This is going to bring a lot of right moisture out of the Gulf down here. So this could be a lot of severe weather, especially as we actually back this up a little bit more into Wednesday. But it looks like there's just more moisture with this system as we're getting closer to Thursday. This could be some severe weather. I want to watch Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, into Friday of next week with a severe weather chance across the middle of the country with this storm system. And then as we're getting into Friday, a week from today, the 21st, we got a pretty strong low pressure cutting across the Midwest. Of course, we don't know if this is exactly the way this is going to look, but model guys really liking the idea of something about a week from today. This is just going to be a warm storm system, not any really real winter weather associated with this across the central and definitely not the eastern U.S., as the pattern really favors a lot of energy cutting across the middle of the country. But I do want to watch this. Could bring some significant weather. And just in general, between now and, like I said, all the way up to the early portion of Thanksgiving week, even the Climate Prediction Center is saying the chances at above average precipitation are pretty high across the entirety of the lower 48. If you live in the green area, which covers just about every state in the lower 48, you have a chance at above average precipitation. So we are likely going to get a lot of moisture from this pattern setting up, especially across the middle of the country. And we go to the 8 to 14 day outlook, above average chances at precipitation across the middle of the country. So we continue to move forward here. We look at what the Euro ensemble is showing between now and about the morning of the 24th of November. And it really likes the western U.S. for a lot of moisture. And some of this could be snow in the higher elevations. In this area right here, and we'll kind of actually zoom into this the middle of the country, and I think a lot of this moisture could come from that significant storm system next week. But you see Texas and Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri into the Midwest, up the Mississippi River area. Multiple inches of rain is likely, and this will be all rain. Even all the way up here into the UP of Michigan, this will likely be nothing but rain between right now and all the way up to the early portion of Thanksgiving a week. So definitely an active pattern setting up, and the majority of this is definitely going to be rain into this region. But talking about severe weather with that storm system potential next week, between day 4 and day 8, it just says predictability too low on the Storm Prediction Center site. But it does have a discussion down here. Pause the screen if you want to read this. But right now they're not going to put a 15% chance of this, but I could see that changing in the next day or two. If they do, it'll be sometime next work week for a higher chance of severe weather. And if we do look at moisture levels, these are dew points. This is a thermodynamic and ingredient thermodynamic wise that supports severe weather, or either it doesn't. And then we'll show you kinematics. But if we're looking at dew points, this is starting off Monday morning, the 17th. You can see a plume of moist air down here, dew points in the 60s. That certainly is humid air, especially for this time of the year, back half of November standards. And as we're starting to move into Tuesday, and this is the smoothed out Euro Ensemble, the EPS. So this is a pretty impressive signal. This is getting into that Tuesday time frame, the 18th. We got a big plume of moisture into Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Western Tennessee, Arkansas, and even as we are getting into, say, Wednesday, even deeper moisture. We got dew points showing up in the 70s along the Texas coastline. So this is definitely an ingredient for severe weather. Do you have flow moving over this? That's a big question. And as we are moving into Thursday, still a moist sector there. And I do think as we're getting into Friday, things could change a little bit. But in response to these higher moisture levels and just higher humidity in the atmosphere, we're going to get a spike in CAPE, which is storm fuel, the available fuel in the atmosphere to support storm development and to bring us severe weather chances. And of course, as we're getting into Tuesday, we got CAPE levels well over 1,000 joules per kilogram down here in Texas. So this is definitely going to support severe weather. We could have a multi-day setup of at least a risk of strong to severe thunderstorms for Texas as we are getting into next week, and surrounding states also, especially as we move into Thursday. This could shift a little bit. But a lot of heavy rain potential. And remember, I've mentioned this a lot, it's been very slow weather-wise in the south central U.S. Not a whole lot going on at all. But I do think things change pretty dramatically next week with this storm system. So is there enough flow to boot kinematics overlapping the thermodynamics, the moisture, the CAPE, things like that, warmer temperatures? Well, I do think it takes all the way into about Tuesday before we get enough upper wind flow overriding kinematics as wind energy, overriding these thermodynamics to really move into the south central U.S. And this really starts to show up. You see this dip in the trough here, storm system bringing a lot of flow in the upper levels of the atmosphere. And as we're getting into Wednesday, we definitely need to watch. This is your classic look for a lot of wind flow, but where's your best dew points going to be? Is it going to be up here? Is it going to be down here? That's what we need to figure out. Okay, best overlapping ingredients is where your highest severe weather chances are going to be. In between now and Monday morning, the 24th, not next Monday morning, but the Monday morning after of Thanksgiving week, it does show a signal for higher elevation snow across the western U.S., especially as we get into Thanksgiving week. But this is mainly kind of confined to the higher elevated regions. In the central U.S., not really a strong signal at all. Really, the stuff you see up here is once we get into that Sunday, the 23rd, Monday, 24th. Okay? And definitely nothing between now and about the 24th of November in the eastern U.S. besides just some lake effect stuff. And this is really happening kind of right now into the next few days. So moving forward, though, and this is really speaking on the pattern after everything else we just spoke on, right? So we're moving from the 24th onward. All right, so the big blue that you see on your screen across the western U.S. areas of Canada, this is lower pressure, a trough that brings storminess and cold air. And then the warmer colors, the yellow, orange, and red you see on your screen, this is ridging. Higher pressure normally brings calmer conditions, and it can bring warmer than average temperatures, things like that. So what you got here, as we're starting off Monday morning, the 24th, we got a big trough beginning to dive into the western U.S. And this is backed up also by, the GFS ensemble and the Canadian ensemble also. So, we're on the same page here in this starting point. But as we move forward here, this trough will continue to drop more than likely. And the further out we get, the more fuzzy the details get, the less confident we are. But you can see the spiking ridge up into Alaska. This normally means something is going to get dislodged from the Arctic, which is cold air. So that we call this a negative EPO, but we have a positive PNA, which means we have a trough digging out west, and we still got this spiking ridge across the eastern U.S., which is going to continue to bring us warmer than average temperatures all the way through Thanksgiving week for the eastern half of the country. But this trough continues to dig, but as we are starting to get closer to Thanksgiving Day, you can see this blue area begins to shift a little bit more to the east. This is going to create some sort of battleground of an air mass. Cold air, warm air clashing. We're probably going to have energy in between both. So it could bring some wild weather right around the Thanksgiving time frame. We take this all the way to the end of the run. And this trough doesn't move a whole lot for the western U.S., but we still have this spiking ridge up into Alaska. This is going to continue to pump cold air down into the lower 48. So, and if you look at temperatures in response, and you literally started off Thanksgiving Day, you can see that battle in air masses. The blue, the green, this is below average temperatures. Don't focus so much on how below average it is, even though I will tell you the green is like, anywhere from 8 to 15 degrees below average. But, the warmer colors you see on your screens, obviously warmer than average temperatures. This is across the eastern U.S. And if you do look at your 10-day forecast, 15-day forecast on the Weather Channel app, whatever, for, somewhere in the eastern U.S., you're going to see there's a big warm-up coming. For example, I live in Columbia, South Carolina. It says nothing but 70s as far as the eye can see all the way up to Thanksgiving Day. And the pattern supports that. So if you're a big warm weather fan, you like what's coming. But you can see there's a change up. And if I go just past Thanksgiving on the Euro ensemble here, you can see the cold air trying to ooze further into the central U.S., moving ever so slightly as we're getting into the last weekend of November to the east. But confidence is definitely increasing on cold air moving into the western half of the country. Now, this is backed up by the GFS ensemble too, and we can actually look at the O6Z. No, we cannot. It has not fully ran, so that kind of stinks. So we're going to have to scoot this in forward. But we started off Thanksgiving morning. You can see there's some sort of battleground of temperatures right in the middle of the country. So we start to move into, say, the last Friday of Thanksgiving, the 28th. You can see cold air progresses faster on the GFS ensemble, which you guys know I'm not a huge fan of. It just has not done well lately, but I like to show all model guides to see if it backs up one another. But on the GFS ensemble, it gets that cold air taking over the central U.S. more and scooting it further east. In fact, we take it all the way to the final frame here, getting all the way into the last weekend of the last weekend of November. Thanksgiving's not a month, Mitch. But you see the colder than average temperatures oozing into the eastern U.S. So, as far as any kind of weather systems around Thanksgiving, we know the day before Thanksgiving, one of the most highly traveled days of the year. This is actually starting off, well, we can back it up. This is the day before Thanksgiving. The Euro doesn't show anything too crazy on Thanksgiving itself. Has a big storm system a couple days after Thanksgiving moving into the western U.S. I mean, a big storm system, but on Thanksgiving Day itself, not a whole lot. But I'm watching that week for something as the pattern shifts. GFS is totally different because it progresses the cold air further east faster, and we have an all-out snowstorm. For example, this is Thanksgiving afternoon. Okay, it shows a snowstorm breaking loose across the Rockies and is scooting across the country with a lot of cold air diving down. But we know the GFS is just off the chain sometime, and not in a good way. But, to extend this past what the Euro ensemble, GFS ensemble is showing, okay, this is when you get into that, very fuzzy territory. What does the Euro extended show, the weekly? You say, well, it really wants to amplify this trough across areas of the western and central U.S. and really wants to hang it up in this area. And this is getting way out, right? We're getting into the first day or two in December. Continues to hang around a ridge in the eastern U.S. It's going to continue to give us above average temperatures for the eastern U.S. the first few days of December. But something shifts as we are getting about several days to a week into December. It looks like the trough changes and really positions itself, doesn't dive deeply, but positions itself more across the middle of the country, really bowls out here and stretches across areas of the east. Now, listen, one thing that's catching my attention, and I'm going to stop it right here, and I'm going to draw on this a little bit. This really catches my attention, is we're seeing blue extending all the way up here. So we got blocking in the higher latitudes. So this just tells me a big shot of cold air really into somewhere into the country as we're getting several days into December. Whether it's going to really set up over the middle of the country, the eastern U.S., the western U.S., or everybody in between, to me, this screams Arctic air, and the origins are from the true Arctic. Like you got, yeah, I mean, that to me, this tells me Arctic is getting dislodged right into here. Okay, now is the storm track just going to be right in here, which means we got winter storms in here, and down here we're going to kind of be in the warmer side. We got to figure out all those details. But, you know, as we're getting kind of to the middle portion of December, we're getting into late December, everything kind of gets fuzzy. But, you know, you're looking at the Euro extended, and this is in 1 week intervals. So this is between the 28th of November to the 5th of November. You can see still hanging on to above average, around average temperatures for the eastern U.S. But as we start to ooze into kind of the first first half of December, you can see the below average temperatures begin to ooze east and take over the eastern U.S. And really the entire lower 48 looks cool. And we go all the way to about Christmas. It's between the 21st and the 28th of December. It's very far out, I know. Going with below average temperatures. So what's interesting between now and 15 days, right? The pattern doesn't support snow really at all much for the eastern U.S., except for some lake effect snows, maybe, not a whole lot. You can see all of it's anchored, for the upper portion of the middle of the country and in the western U.S., right? So we extend this from now all the way out to the 14th, 15th of December, and you can see, look how that kind of jots down dramatically. It's a pretty big difference. So you can tell something winter-wise changes a lot between the end of November and the middle portion of November. And then you extend this even further, and this goes a few days past Christmas, and everything bogs down a little bit more. Okay? So, and this is one thing I'll look at here is the MJO. This is the thing that kind of confuses people, but I'll keep it very simple with you. Right now, we are in phase 6. Okay, I'm going to make this pink. We are in phase 6 right now. See the 7, the 9, the 11, blah, 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 12, 14. We're kind of right into here. Okay, so phase 6, pretty warm phase across the majority of the country. Phase 7, it can work out for some people, especially for the northern tier of the country, but it shows us getting into phase 7 over the next couple days, but it shows us kind of getting hung up in phase 7 for a couple weeks. So you see 28th, 30th, that is November 28th, November 30th. Then the Euro extended here is forecasting us to still be in phase 7 as we are getting into the 2nd, 4th of December. This 2, this 4, this is December 2, December 4th, okay? And then it shows us sneaking into phase 8, into the middle portion of December. Phase 8 is the golden phase for cold across the central and eastern U.S. Phase 1 works too, phase 2 also works, and phase 3 can even work. But all these phases right into here, phase 7, 6, 5, and 4, these are the warm phases. Warm. These are the cold phases. So there's a chance that we slowly progress this into the colder phases in a very favorable climo time of the year, but we still really, really struggle with trying to forecast the MJO, folks. It continues to be a struggle, and I think it will continue to be a struggle. This changes so much, but I didn't buy much into the MJO, even just a year or so ago. But when I saw how the atmosphere responded to the MJO this past January, it really made me a huge believer that this is a really great correlation to what we actually see in the lower 48. So phase 7 is not going to work if you want snow decently further south. It's going to work for some people. It's going to allow for Arctic air to really ooze into the country. But there's going to be some sort of battleground. Phase 7 to me screams a ridge across areas of the country. And listen, it makes sense. We got phase 7 that we're getting hung up in. in late November, early December. And I mean, honestly, that's backed up by this very well. We kind of move this forward, kind of getting a ridge hung up in this area. And we got some sort of clashing of seasons right in the middle of the country. To me, that screams phase 7. But if we can get into phase 8, that's when things can change. Okay, now this is right up here on your screen here. Now, the latest 3 to 4 week temperature outlook, which was issued a week ago, we get a new one today, shows exactly what the Euro Weeklies is showing. The thing I want to see is as we get a new one issued today, because today's the 14th, do they move the blue, more so kind of into here or kind of into here? If I'm being honest, I don't think it'll change much with what it's showing right here, but I could see them moving the blue a little bit more down here. So I'm fascinated to see what they show later on this afternoon with this. But that's all I got, guys. I don't have a daily forecast. I'm running very low on time this morning. I get to mentor my guy this morning. I haven't gotten to mentor him. It's a kid I mentor. He's in 5th grade. I haven't gotten to do it yet this school year, so I'm excited to do it, but I got to be up there in about 15 minutes. So I do have a Bible devotion. It's 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 48. I've done this one before, but I want to go over it again. It's 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 48, and it says, when the Philistines started forward to attack him, David ran quickly to the battle line to meet the Philistines. So this is the story of David and Goliath, right? Many people have heard this, all right? It fires me up every time I read this. I mean, David just ran up to the giant. He just ran right up to him, did not hesitate and challenged him. So I put here, I said, David did not hesitate. David had the faith that God would get him through the situation. He relied on God's strength and not his own. I think this is one of the best examples of the Bible of how we are called to meet our adversities head on. We don't shy away from it. God is ready to empower you through the situation, but do you have the faith that, God is ready to empower you through the situation, but do you have the faith that he will? So, I do want to say this, it's easier said than done, right? But just note that whatever the end result of the adversity you are facing might not be the end result that you want, but the end result that God wants from your life, you have to have the faith in that's his, that's his will. So, something might not come out of it the way you want it to come out of it, but it's the way that God wants it to come out your situation. I hope that makes sense. But, I always think that's a fantastic example of just no hesitation, straight faith. And, David just went up there and knocked this dude out. And, he was empowered by God's strength. And he had faith in God's strength, and he leaned on him. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all. Y'all have a wonderful Friday, and we'll do it again tomorrow morning. God bless.